Episode of Cannabis Health Radio. I'm Ian Jessup.
And I'm Corey Elland.
Before we get into today's podcast, I'd like to remind listeners that Cannabis Health Radio is supported by our listeners. Corey and I would encourage you to go to the donate page on our website, cannabishealthradio.com, and make a pledge. You can make a one-time donation, or you can become a monthly supporter for as little as $3 a month, the price of a cup of coffee. And we thank you for your support. It is estimated by the World Health Organization that close to 800,000 people worldwide will die of cancer each year. And while both men and women can develop liver cancer, it most certainly affects men. Unfortunately, liver cancer is often deadly, with 15% of those with the disease having a 5-year survival rate. One man who had liver cancer and successfully used cannabis to deal with it is Steve Taylor, who joins us from his home in Perth, Australia. Steve, good to talk to you.
Good to be here, Ian. Thank you.
Yeah, and you don't have an Australian accent because you were born in Australia but raised in Victoria, British Columbia. Do I have that right?
That's correct. I was born here, but as a child moved back to Canada, where I grew up and learned to speak, basically, and went to school.
Steve, what were some of the symptoms you were experiencing that led you to go to a doctor?
For me, it was really just like a pressing against the ribs and a continual upset stomach, and that which then led into lack of energy and anemic blood, so I would bleed and not clot that well. So I felt that I needed to get in and see a doctor, but unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of success in getting an early diagnosis because the doctors were quite busy and were more intent on sort of looking at the current fads like gluten intolerance and irritable bowel syndrome and such. It wasn't until November that I got a cleared exam, and the doctor actually read my notes, and she then sent me to hospital and came up with the official HCC diagnosis.
No, HCC is exactly what?
It's hepatocellular
carcinoma.
Carcinoma, thank you.
Right. Yeah, that's the most common form of liver cancer, from what I understand, which makes up 75% of all liver cases. How long were you experiencing these symptoms before they finally diagnosed you with liver cancer?
I would say close to a year.
Close to a year. What happened once you got your diagnosis?
Well, as I said, there was a series of sort of male doctors that were quite busy and quite important. So fortunately, I went in to see one in November because it was getting so bad. I felt I needed to deal with it. And my doctor was ill, and a female doctor was there. She did the echo test, read the notes, and immediately saw a need for scans and hospitalization. So she had me diagnosed within 3 days of the HCC. And they really turned a blind eye to the cirrhosis and the hepatitis, which I asked them to check. So there was a period of time there where there was a lot of frustration trying to get sorted out what was going on.
So besides the cancer, you had cirrhosis of the liver and hepatitis as well?
That's correct. I believe the hepatitis came back because in Canada, I had a liver biopsy for the cirrhosis, which they said at that point was very serious, and they said to basically write a will. And but then through lots of cannabis and a lifestyle change and healthy diet, the UBC blood tests came back, and the liver specialist cleared me of all hepatitis. At that point, I was looking at A, B, and C, and they all came back negative at that time. As well as the liver had regrown and regenerated. So it was sort of like a bit of a miracle. We must explain this. We don't understand. They had a form called Special Cases Must Be Explained. At that point, I was just sort of waltzed out of the hospital on a cloud of air, thinking that, I was saved, and did so for 20 years until I stopped cannabis when I came to Australia because it was illegal.
Yeah, before we jump ahead, you left Australia and came to Canada. But before we get to that, I want to ask you, what did the doctors tell you in Australia about your prognosis and the fact that you had liver cancer? Did they indicate any possibility that you would be a candidate for a liver transplant?
That was my biggest goal. As soon as I found out about the HCC, I pushed hard for the transplant. But at that point, the MRI came back, and it revealed several tumors, one very large one. And according to the Milan criteria, which is an international criteria for transplant, I was just sort of outside the standard for the transplant. So there was no hope. I actually then immediately jumped on a plane, went to Canada to see if I could, because I have health care in Canada, and wasn't able to get a transplant there either. So that was one of the big things where I really pushed towards shrinking those tumors and hitting it hard with the protocol of CO.
So when you got that diagnosis, what was the prognosis? What did they say to you?
They sat me down and said, you must understand you will not live 3 months. It's our duty of care to make you understand you will not live 3 months.
And that was when? When was that, Steve?
Yes, that would have been about Christmas time. Basically, about early January would have been the meeting with the specialist, the oncologist.
So it's been a little longer than 3 months.
Yeah, now it's been almost a year. So I mean, that's a miracle in itself, because I then went hard on the protocol, and then they reassessed and said, your bloods have stabilized. Because at first they didn't offer any chemo. They said it would kill me. I thought that was fairly ethical of them, because they said, look, the chemo will kill you. So here's a bottle of morphine, and we can't help you. And then after about 4 or 5 months, they're like, hey, hang on, you're still around. Did more tests, and at that point wanted to offer me chemo. At that point, I decided that I was satisfied with the way things were going, and not to not to mess with a good thing, which was obviously showing results, and that was the cannabis that was killing the cancer and keeping me alive.
Steve, what goes through your mind when the doctors tell you you've got 3 months to live?
This is one of the hardest things for me, is the whole trip to the doctor. What goes through my mind is a numbing. It's almost a mocking of them, because I think they're foolish. I basically, my rule has been to take what they say and do the opposite, and it's been working pretty well. But that's a dangerous game, because they are very intelligent. So I use their information as a guideline, but don't use their chemicals or their conventional treatments. My mind went numb. I sort of lost it, and it was really a week before I recovered from that. It was like, I mean, to use the cliche of the death mask, it was like that it was painted on, and I couldn't get out of there as quick as possible. I just wanted to run away and deal with it myself. But he was insistent that he had to go through this part of the procedure. It was his duty of care that I fully understood, and I had to admit to him that I understood that he was saying I would be dead in 3 months. But I also said to him, I don't believe it. I will be back. I will be here for my Christmas card. And he laughed and said, I hope so. Well, I'm on my way to pick it up here in a few days.
Do you have medical cannabis laws in Australia? Is it allowed there?
That time it was very illegal, and I was also sort of had many police clients and was working as a security manager, sort of state manager for the, protecting the liquor stores and stuff. So I had to be very careful as well. they've been known here to come into the home and remove children and stuff. So my wife and I have firmly agreed that we would go zero tolerance in the home as a precaution. Now, things are just changing this month. I remember back in April, there were sort of rumors that maybe, because I was in touch with the Minister of Health and they were going to put me on the first trials, and they said maybe 2017, but I'm thinking, God, how am I going to make it till then? Well, here we are, and the laws are finally starting to change because of this great movement of people that won't take no for an answer and have to help themselves.
So you were looking for cannabis. How did you know that cannabis would be possibly helpful in your situation? Well,
I basically have known all along. I've always called it my medicine. And, I was a grower in Canada for years and sort of supplied to Compassion Society and lived with a woman who suffered from MS and used cannabis to aid in her treatment. I've always believed that there are miracle properties in that we just don't understand, but that can't be denied, and that there's no substitute for nature. And also, I had this living proof of the cirrhosis and the example of 1995.
So you decided you were going to come to Canada. Tell us that story.
Okay, well, at that point, I decided that I would come and do an intensive 3-month protocol in Canada. So I basically arrived back in Victoria. At this point, I'd been in touch with Corey as well. And I knew after talking with Corey that she was a lady that could basically give me more information, more experience, and more insight into my journey than anybody I had spoken to or met thus far. So I was very excited with trying to meet with her and learn more. I just knew that I had to continue in this journey. So arrived in Canada, loaded up, and basically consumed between 3 and 4 grams a day of high THC cannabis oil.
Well, you were at that, Steve, you were at that stage 4, were you not? Stage 4 cancer, liver cancer when you got here?
Oh, yes, I was. Yeah.
So you had nothing to lose but your life.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was past my due date at that time. So
past your due date. I like that.
I hadn't expired yet, though. Still on the shelf.
Well, I remember getting that instant message from you saying, let's go for coffee. And I'm like, look, I'm really busy, blah, blah, blah. Right? And then finding out that you've come all the way from Aussie. And I thought, oh, okay, let's go.
I know. I felt so bad. And I know you're such a busy woman. But that is a testimony to just how beautiful you are and how beautiful the people are that I've met in this journey. Everybody that's involved in this movement are just the best people on the planet. They're just so loving and so wonderful. It can't be wrong when it feels so right, just to use the cliche.
So, Steve, you're 3 to 4 grams a day. You must have been pretty wasted.
Not even buzzed.
Seriously?
Not even buzzed, yeah. My tolerance was way up. And, like I said, I have this best friend of mine who, as far as I'm aware of, dogs aren't prosecuting, but he, my best friend, Hemp Dog, was able to cook quite a couple of pounds plus before, and he did that to sort of build up his tolerance. So I sort of followed Hemp Dog's example, if you follow my meaning. And Hemp Dog was in Australia at the time, so.
I can't believe you took that much. It didn't make you at least sleepy.
At times, I would have a good nap. Yeah,
good nap. Are you sure it wasn't a few days long?
I'm pretty sure. I was at my son's, so there was a lot going on while I was there. It was more, my big focus was to be with my son, spend time with him, and he was such a great strength in helping me through this, and my number one supporter in cannabis and healing.
Steve, when you started taking your 3 to 4 grams a day, was there a point where you kind of sensed intuitively that you knew it was working? Absolutely.
I could totally sort of feel all the time that I was moving towards wellness, I guess would be the way to say it. I just sort of would feel better. I could, my brain would come back online. My ascites would be down. My appetite would be up. I'd be driving. I'd be doing all sorts of things, that weren't really possibilities beforehand that, were difficult.
So you're here in Victoria and you're slamming back these 3 and 4 grams a day. When did you officially get, what's the word I'm looking for, confirmation that you were indeed headed in the right direction?
Well, I did get an ultrasound there while I was there, and it came back saying only cirrhosis.
I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Yes. So I'm trying to remember the timeline, though, Steve. I want to say 5 weeks. Was it 5 weeks on oil when you cleared this? Or was it more like 2 months? Or
no, I'm going to say 5 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So from stage 4 liver cancer to cancer-free in 5 weeks.
That's correct.
That's pretty admirable. Just saying.
Steve, when you got the all clear, did you celebrate?
I did, and it wasn't one of my greatest moments. I took my son go-karting, and being a bit of a competitor, I ended up wiping out my go-kart and breaking quite a few ribs right over the liver. So that, there's a funny story there because, they'd given me 3 months to live at that point, but they gave me 4 months to heal. So that was a good sign in itself. I joked to the doctor saying, perhaps, this is the cure. I just wait, 2.5 months, break a few more ribs, and I get 4 more months. I didn't think they really saw the humor in that.
Did the doctors here in Canada know that you had stage 4 liver cancer when you got here?
Yes, he did, but he didn't believe it. I don't think so. I think that might have been an issue that was it sort of in hand there, because he seemed quite skeptical because he knew me from my past when I was quite a different person than I am today.
Did you tell him that you were taking cannabis oil?
Yes, he actually signed the prescription and that for me. Very supportive in that area.
Oh, you lucked out. You got a very good doctor.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Actually, even years ago, he had some patients, an elderly couple, and contacted me and asked me to get him a bag of pot. And that was 20 years ago, the doctor phoning me up. So, if I've got broken ribs or, if I'm bleeding out from a car accident, I want to go see a doctor, But if I've got cancer, I'm not sure that they're my number one ally, because they do have sort of other. I don't know about the GPs as much as the oncologists, though, and I don't want to speculate on other people's ethics or morals either. But generally speaking, there is some corruption that's going on, and we need to sort of wade through that to be able to give ourselves a better chance.
I just think it's hilarious that you were cleared of liver cancer in 5 to 6 weeks. And then you went out and broke your ribs in a go-karting accident. What a way to celebrate! I thought maybe you'd go have a beer or something.
Well, I've quit drinking now for it's been over a year anyway since the diagnosis. I put it away last Halloween 2015. And my father passed away from prostate cancer in September 2015. So been dealing with a few issues not this year, but the last year that sort of contributed to a lot of things.
When you went back to Australia, Steve, did you advise the doctors there that you were cleared? Did you take your paperwork with you?
I've saved all my paperwork, yes.
And what did they say?
Basically, they have done other MRIs, and they're still following the protocol that I have liver cancer.
They say you still have liver cancer?
That's correct.
That doesn't make sense, though. When the doctors in Canada say you're clear, there's no evidence of liver cancer, and the doctors in Australia say you do.
That's where... Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
Steve, what are they basing this on?
Basically what happened, and this is when I broke the ribs, there was some internal bleeding going on.
Mm-hmm.
Go in and they had to do tests, and then they did the tap of the stomach fluid, and they found traces there of cancer cells in the stomach fluid. So they recanted the ultrasound with the test of the stomach fluid. So they're saying, whoa, we made a mistake, you still got it.
Well, it sounded to me like if you do, that it's something pretty minor if it didn't show up on your first test that you had here in Victoria.
Sorry?
I was just going to say, what's your sense about it?
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say my sense about it is this. Basically, there are very similar symptoms of the cirrhosis and the liver cancer. So, like, you know, everything that I'm experiencing now, I'm directly attributing it to the cirrhosis side of things, because I'm sort of putting the cancer behind me, saying like that one we've dealt with. Now let's focus on this one. So I'm dealing with diet and health, and looking at the best ways to try and give my liver a chance to fight back again. It's an uncharacteristically small, horribly cirrhosed liver. So that's a challenge in itself, and it's creating a lot of issues. So that's kind of my sense. Well,
it seems to me like you've kind of called it all along and been pretty intuitive about what's going on within yourself.
I'd like to think so. I think, and I don't know if it's really me or more universalness, or I'm not sure the right word, synchronicities. It's just been an amazing journey where things, just meeting you, for example, where things have just fallen into place. And it's beautiful to watch. You know, I've watched my life change. I've watched, I have a new understanding, a newfound sense of humility, just all sorts of things. I've been able to start this page in sort of your honor, Corey, here in Australia, and in a month we've grown to 3,000 members. And
well, that's awesome, Steve. Why don't you tell people what they need to type into the Facebook search bar, particularly Aussie people and New Zealand down that way? The name of your page.
I have a page which is through my Facebook, and that's called Hemp Dog Cancer Coaching. And I also have a website we're just getting up and running to sort of funnel off and keep more organized, so people can go in there and I'll have a blog, and we'll have a library and files and be much more organized. And that's www.hempdoghealing.com.
Don't forget to tell them, Steve, that they can also donate to Cannabis Health Radio.
Absolutely.
A cup of coffee a month. That's right.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to have to do that ourselves.
That's great. Appreciate it. Has this given you, this may sound like a dumb question, but I've never been in the position that you and Corey have been in. Has this given you a new appreciation for life? Absolutely. It's a whole new appreciation for life. You see it on a whole new level. And with something like the web page or helping others, you have this new will to live, and you can focus and all of these things of just sort of, I believe so much. I believe that you need to be humble, and once you admit that you can be wrong, then you can heal, and once you can grow, and then once you can grow, you can heal.
Well, it's interesting. We interviewed a lady that I helped, Paula Doyle, and she was talking about how she really believes the key to healing cancer is to heal within first, to heal that emotional self. And once you heal the emotional self, the physical self will follow.
I think that's absolutely true. I think, it's a process, and it's a beautiful thing to see happen.
So, Steve, you are a different person mentally today than you were, say, a year ago, both mentally and physically.
I'd like to think so. I'm definitely trying. I know at times I'm a grumpy old bear, and my wife can't stand me, and I go through the moods like you do. But generally speaking, I have a greater understanding of what life means and how where my place in it is, and also how it's just the beginning. It's just a wonderful part of this whole journey. I mean, even death, when it comes, is an open door, and we move through it.
Steve, what are the rules like in Australia with respect? We talked a bit about this at the beginning, but with respect to cannabis legislation in Australia, how are things changing there?
Just this November, they've just gone decriminalized. So the whole of the continent, all of the states are now, we're the first continent in the world to decriminalize. But like everything, the government sort of got his sort of hand in the cookie jar and is trying to make sure that they get all the good bits. So it's
when you say good bits, when you say good bits, they're looking at ways to extract revenue from this.
Exactly. Yeah, they're looking to change it to their. I think one of the things they've done is set up only 2 growers, and they're government growers or something. But we'll get to apply down the road to be a grower or something. But I mean, in some ways, it's a step in the right direction because they can't come in and legally arrest you for using medicinal marijuana here anymore. And I have a prescription from an Australian doctor, so legitimately and legalistically, I should be all right, mate. Just tell the Aussian.
Yeah. Do you have dispensaries there? Medical cannabis dispensaries?
No, it's nothing like Canada where there's a Starbucks on every corner. There's nothing here.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
It sounds like a good place to start a business.
Wow. Absolutely.
I mean, you know what it's like here and in the west coast of the United States. Yeah, there's dispensaries all over. And
when I day record of Canada and the income, they just blew Colorado away and stuff. I mean, it makes sense.
Steve, is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
There's probably 1,000 of things I wished I'd said, and probably many more things that I've said that I shouldn't have said. I talk a lot. In conclusion, I just want to thank you, Ian, and you, Corey, for giving me this opportunity to make my experience public to others, and I hope that in sharing it, that it might be of some use to someone. I think that's the focus of where I'm at today. Is if anything can be used to help somebody else, or to make their life a little better, or to educate them, then I feel vindicated in what I've done.
No, it's very well said, Steve. Because
thank you.
What Corey and I are trying to do is help people understand the benefits of this plant. We're not suggesting it is a panacea for everything, but it is an alternative to some of the pharmaceutical drugs that people are taking today. And I guess probably, Corey, maybe you'd agree with me that one of the big, or the lack of understanding that people have, is that we have an endocannabinoid system within our bodies, and we all produce cannabis, as many doctors have indicated, including Dave Hepburn, who we talked to on this program. And I think that's something that people have to get their heads around yet. And that's what we're trying to do, just to help people have a better understanding of the wonderful medical benefits of marijuana, of cannabis.
Just trying to educate people. I've got my laptop open here, Stephen. I'm looking at a picture of you, and I'm flashing on the first time I met you and the time that I met you when you had got the all clear, and the difference even in your physical appearance was just amazing.
it is funny how psychologically it can make such a big difference, and that's one of the biggest things that cannabis probably did for me, is give me that extra push, that hope, that faith, that conviction that cannabis kills cancer and I'm going to beat this. And as you said, Ian, just the knowledge of the wonders of the endocannabis system and the miraculous brain and its abilities.
Corey, how different was he before and after?
The first time that I met Steve, he was very thin, gaunt looking. His abdomen was really swollen with fluid. He had a little bit to eat, but he couldn't eat much. And I think we visited for about an hour, but by the end of that hour, it was really obvious that he was really uncomfortable. When I met him after he got the all clear, he was able to eat. His abdomen was a whole lot smaller than it was. He had more energy. He totally looked different. You could sense the energy coming off of him. His whole aura and demeanor were different.
Does that sound like you, Steve? Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think so. I mean, definitely, I can definitely relate to when you're saying energy and aura. That was definitely something that cannabis gave to me.
Steve, wonderful to talk to you. Great of you to do this. I realize it's nighttime here and it's morning in Australia. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No worries, and thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And there you have it, another episode of Cannabis Health Radio. Wherever you are in the world, thanks very much for listening, and thank you all for your support.
You've been listening to the Cannabis Health Radio podcast. Visit our website, cannabishealthradio.com, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.